Welcome in, everybody, to a special YouTube edition of the High Low Sports Podcast, where today we are talking college football. The season is already underway after week 0 and Farmageddon kicked off just this last Saturday. We are getting ready to head into week 1 here later this week. So each day we'll be talking something in relation to college football. It is DJ, joined as always by my co host Kelsey, as college football is officially back, but it's really about to crank up this week as we have a lot of very big name games coming up that are going to have some serious playoff implications before we even hit September.
Yeah, there might be a few natty prediction or natty previews in week 1 of all things. That's kind of surprising to think of, right? But yeah, week 0 was a fun kickoff to the season. Hey, who knew that Avery Johnson's dad could get into a fight with his own son? But it was a crazy situation, and honestly, it was a great game to kick off the season in Ireland. And well, I'll say I wasn't surprised with the way the rest of the night went. It went pretty according to plan, and honestly, I'm excited for week 1 now.
Absolutely. I can't wait. And you know what? We're not going to have a whole lot more for family feuds, but what we are going to do is we're going to preview ahead to what we think the playoff is going to look like. We got 12 teams again debuting last year. This year, they cleaned it up a little bit, so it was a little less stupid about how teams advance. We're not going to have Ohio State versus Oregon in the second round on a neutral site. We're not doing any of that weirdness. We at least are going to have it seeded properly this year from what should be properly. It's not just going to be the 4 conference winners getting the top 4. In theory, it should play out, but what we did is we each made our own brackets because college football and brackets go together like peanut butter and jelly on toast. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of our own brackets here and see how they play out. So I'm going to go and start with mine. Let's take a look at the core 4, if you will. These will be the 4 teams that get a bye. I got Texas winning the SEC, Ohio State winning the Big Ten, Clemson winning the ACC. And for that 4th spot, I don't have a Big 12 winner getting a bye. I think it will be Georgia. I think for the most part, them and Texas are going to roll through a lot of the SEC. I think it's going to be very similar to what we saw last year, where it was like, okay, Georgia technically won the SEC, but Texas cooked everybody not named Georgia during their run. Just this time, it's going to be a little inverse. So here's how I have my 4 playing out, which is going to take us now. Well, how is the rest of it going to shake out? Let's take a look here. Basically, first one out of those core 4 is Penn State. I think they are going to be awesome. I think they will. There's a good chance they could split with Ohio State if they. I think they can meet in the Big Ten championship game. In this case, Ohio State would win the Big Ten championship. Penn State would, or maybe Penn State beats everybody but Ohio State. I think they're going to be awesome. Drew Aller's going to stand out. Number 6, Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman, Jeremiah Love. They have a quarterback who could throw a forward pass this year and is more than a fullback. Their defense is still phenomenal, despite losing guys like Benjamin Morrison. I think they're still going to be very well coached, and I do have this matchup set up for an absolute reason. Them and LSU, the Brian Kelly Bowl, a little bit biased picking this home, but I want it to happen, so we're going to plug it in there regardless. And I do think LSU is good enough to squeak their way in there if Brian Kelly doesn't get in the way. Garrett Nussmeier, I think, is a really good quarterback. They got some good weapons still, despite constantly churning out draft prospects at receiver every 2 seconds. They churn out all-time rookie receivers, but I think they still have the weapons. The defense is still solid. So I have LSU finding a way to squeak their way in there as that good big name SEC team that there's like, all right, you get in there to make the names look a little bit better on the screen. But from there, we're gonna go to number 7. Number 7, I have Alabama. Similar reason, but I think DeBoer is gonna get the tide rolling a little bit more this year. That first year, a little bit rough, especially in that new revamped SEC with all those new teams in there. I think it was a little tough for him to maybe get his footing in there. I think now he's got a chance to get his feet wet, get a little recruiting, and the seat's a little warmer. It is Alabama, so you don't have a whole lot of time to get it going. You get that year, and now you got to get your you-know-what in the playoffs. Number 8, Oregon. I think they're going to be awesome. I think the downside is Penn State and Ohio State are just going to get in their way at various points, so they're not going to get the luxury of a conference championship, but they're still great. They have a quarterback over 5'10" this year. I think that's only going to help. Number 9, Michigan. Bryce Underwood's an interesting prospect at quarterback. I still have my questions with Shamar Moore as the head guy leading the way, but it's kind of a fresh slate. It's officially his team now. It's not the one coming right off the championship. So we're going to see how they fill in a lot of those spots, but I think the trenches are going to be really strong. So we'll take Michigan to find their way in. Number 10, we have Arizona State. I think they're going to be the Big 12 winner. I think Big 12 is going to be, we already saw Iowa State and Kansas State. I think a lot of the Big 12 games are going to look like that. Very close, very competitive. Nobody's going to really stand out, though. Like, I think ASU could very easily be like a 10-3 type team, but win the Big 12. I don't think anyone's going to roll. I like the Big 12. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I think Sam Levitt has a real good chance to maybe push himself into first-round quarterback territory. I think he's a really good quarterback, and now it's going to be his offense, not the Jersey muscle hamster himself and Cam Scatterbo getting all the headlines and the torque. I think Sam Levitt's going to make some noise. Then 11 and 12, we got Tulane and LSU getting there. I already mentioned LSU, and then Tulane gonna get in there as just that kinda group of 5 teams that kinda where Boise State was last year, just without a bye. I think Boise State's good. I'm curious how they replace their entire offense in Ashton Jeanty. I'm kidding, they did have a good their quarterback's nice, they have some weapons, but those are some big shoes to fill. I'm gonna run
Yeah.
through the oh, good.
No, I was saying I like where most of your teams line up at. I do maybe question the Notre Dame LSU matchup, the Brian Kelly matchup.
Look,
Just because
sometimes we
of the
gotta be a
Brian
little
Kelly
bit
matchup.
wishful thinking here.
Yeah, just because
We're
of the Brian
saying
Kelly
LSU gets
matchup.
in there like 9-4. Like, they're the one where everyone's like, "What? How?" And it's just because Garrett Nussmeier throws like 40 touchdowns. I'm like, "All right, we gotta get him in there." Like,
Yeah,
there's a hole there in like the 11 through 14 range where you could kinda just plug and play as I have it playing out. Then they put Garrett, who I think has an awesome season, basically. We want to see him, so we will get him in there by any means necessary. What they would do
that's
if
fair.
Jaden Daniels at LSU were around 2 when they went 10-3, I believe it was. It's like,
Yeah, what they
he's the
tried to do with
Heisman Trophy
Jaden.
winner. Exactly. Let's just get him in there because we wanna see magic happen, but from there, how we have it planned out, Oregon will advance, get the benefit over Michigan, just more firepower. Penn State will run through Tulane as much as this is a pro Tulane show. I think Penn State is an absolute unit. That's just an unfortunate draw for Tulane. Notre Dame will get in over LSU. It is still the Brian Kelly Bowl, and there's a reason the team without Brian Kelly will win. Then Alabama over ASU. I think that's going to be the most competitive of the first round games. I think ASU is I think they're, I don't want to say scrappy because that's so cliche, but I think they can make a game out of it with just about anybody when they're locked in. I'm just a little bit too high on Sam Levin. He's about to have a Matt Barkley senior season type downfall on me. So the ones who know, they know. Remember old USC Matt Barkley went from potential second overall pick to fifth round pick. But I like ASU. I think they make it competitive, but Alabama will advance. So from there, we will have Oregon, Texas, Georgia, Penn State, banger for matchup. Clemson, Notre Dame, and Ohio State, Alabama. Also, anytime you just get those names involved, that's always fun, regardless of the situation. Alabama, Ohio State's always a zinger. So let's take a look at how I have it going into our final four. To no surprise, really, Texas will get by Oregon, in my opinion. I do have Penn State with the quote unquote first upset getting by Oregon. I think they have just I have some questions about Georgia's offense this year. I still think with Stockton at quarterback, I'm curious how that's going to play out. We already know they got dogs, no pun intended, across the board. They always do. As long as Kirby Smart's there, they will find a way. But I think Penn State has I think their receiving core is going to be a lot nicer this year. Last year, that was kind of the knock on them is it was like, well, who are you going to throw to besides Tyler Warren? The receiving core had some real
Mhm.
holes in it. I think that's going to be patched up this year. I'm a fan of Drew Aller. I think he's going to make some steps forward. And defensively, James Franklin, I think they're going to find a way to just get past Georgia. That's a really underrated game. OSU versus Alabama, I talked about the names. OSU is just much better, though. They're just loaded across the board. Even when it comes to phenom once in 10 years receivers, Ohio they have 2 of them in this game, and Ohio State got the better one, in my opinion. Like, they're just better across the board, even in phenomenal young talents that are under 20 years old. Clemson, Notre Dame, maybe probably competitive, but I just think Clemson's really good. I think they are a very, very good team that is almost underrated for reasons we will talk about later. I'm gonna now move. Who's getting to the championship game? Well, that's why we're gonna talk about it later. We have Texas versus Clemson. It is really hard to repeat in college football, and it's even harder now when you have this kind of playoff. There's a reason outside of Nick Saban, Alabama, where they were just handing out rings like confetti. I don't think it's really hard to repeat. We saw it last year. Michigan couldn't even get back. You've seen it the year before. Georgia went back to back. And they were one of the most dominant teams we've ever seen. Really, like that 2022 team was just that dominant. And even in 2021, they almost didn't get back because of that loss when Bryce Young won his Heisman Trophy, but they found their way back. I do think Clemson has a lot of edges, and I do. I'm going to ask you this one as the number one skeptic. Are you more of a Ryan Day guy now, or do you still have your questions?
No, I still have my questions. I
And I think
he's
this is where we'll see questions too. He's still good, but
yeah.
questions.
Yeah, there's just too many questions about him in close games is just terrifying. When he has a front runner, it's a lot better. When he has a lead, he can keep a lead, but it's like, can you come back every time? I don't know. It's like LeBron in the fourth when he was with the Heat. You weren't really sold until you actually did it.
I think that's a good way to word it for sure. That's not even really a knock on Ohio State. I'm also saying Clemson is just that good. They got 2 top 10 picks in their defensive front 7. I'm a big Cade Klubnik guy. A lot of people hate on him unnecessarily, I think, because too much hype out of the gate, understandably so. People tried to say he was next Trevor Lawrence as a 5-star recruit, and he was kind of trash his first year and a half. I get that. But
Mhm.
what he did last year, especially the back half of that second year and all of last year, he was, for the most part, phenomenal. The end of the season stats coming into this season, I think he is a very he's gonna make some noise, I believe. I think him that's gonna lead to Texas, one of the best teams in the country. I think everyone not just the Arch Manning factor, they're also elite on defense, and even when they lost Jonathan Brooks, A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Jatavion Sanders, like, "Oh, no, what are they gonna do?" "Oh, they're gonna be better next year." They somehow just gonna reload all those positions. "Oh, no, they lost Isaiah Bond this year and Matthew Golden." "Well, great, here comes Wingo now in a number 1 role." Like, they just it's a system Sark has put together there, and I think they made an upgraded quarterback. Granted, we are basing it off of 2 games of Arch Manning we've seen, and one 66-yard run that ended with a Carmelo Anthony celebration, so maybe that's a little biased on my part just seeing that. It got me hyped, but I think Texas is still just gonna be an absolute unit, gonna find a way to the championship game, and I'm gonna think they're going to find a way. I did just hype up Clemson a lot. I think they're going to be awesome, but Texas is such a well-oiled machine from top to bottom. They have arguably, if not the best defensive player in the country, maybe the 2nd best. Like, they have some dogs on defense. They got some dogs on offense. They have almost assuredly a future number 1 overall pick at quarterback. Maybe not this upcoming season, maybe the following season, but by all intents and purposes, we anticipate him to be awesome. There's too much to like about Texas, and I think if they run through the SEC, they're gonna run through the college football playoff. So I have the battle of orange in the championship with the Longhorns. I can't think of a steer joke off my way. So steering their way to the championship or back in there since for the first time since Vince Young holding up the trophy, however you want to slice it.
I have my
Oh wait,
own
20-year
Texas joke.
anniversary since Vince Young. There we go. 20-year
Yeah.
anniversary. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, I have my own Texas joke, but I'm gonna save it for my back bracket. But
That's fine.
yeah, no, I actually I don't mind where you went with this. I'm still not sold on Clemson. We'll talk about why later, but yeah, I think between Ryan Day and Dabo, I think that matchup is just doomed to fail to begin with. So it's whichever team makes the least amount of mistakes in closing out the quarters and at the end of a game. And then going up against Sark right now, what that Texas team is doing. And by the way, after the SEC Media Day, they have a bit of a chip on their shoulder because somebody threw the Longhorn down
Oh
on the
boy.
big screen behind it. So SEC Media Day, thanks for making Texas a nuisance for the rest of the season. We greatly appreciate that. Absolutely.
That's basically like mocking Patrick Mahomes like the Raiders did last year to Kermit the Frog. It's like, way to go. Thanks a lot. You just stabbed the bear that was already a little upset. Now you just stabbed him with an arrow. Now he's coming after all of us. Way to go.
Yeah. So no, I like where you went with this the bracket. I think with those teams that all makes sense to me. Obviously, barring major injury or anything like that, I think this on paper makes sense.
We'll see, because unfortunately the games aren't played on paper, so at least 3 of these teams are not gonna make it, all but guaranteed, which means we're gonna go take a look at how Kelsey has things shaken out. So Kelsey, where they are similar, they are also quite different.
Yeah. So my top 4, Texas winning the SEC. As I said, they created a monster. Thank you, SEC, for that. We greatly appreciate that. Arch is a freer passer than Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers seemed like he forced things. And also Arch is a freer runner than Quinn, especially post-injury for Quinn versus that. And then you add in this defense has gotten better somehow, which it doesn't feel like it's normal that a defense can get this good, but it's kind of like Georgia was a couple years ago where they just kept retooling year after year after year. So I see that happening. Oregon, look, Dan Lanning proved me wrong at this point in time that Oregon is not one of the best teams in the Big Ten because right now they don't go against Ohio State all this year. And that's a huge path.
And we seem to have lost him for a little bit there. It looks like got a little bit too hyped on Oregon. He lives in Ohio, so it looks like the Buckeyes might have been trying to
Yeah.
cut his Wi-Fi there, but we got him back now.
Yeah, it looks like the Buckeye internet decided to cut itself out. But no, look, I think Oregon is the winner in the Big Ten. Ohio State second. I think Oregon beats them in the championship game, and Ohio State comes in second. That's the only loss for Ohio State outside of Texas. You lose the number 1, and you lose the number 2. Well, guess what? That makes you when you beat everybody else. It makes you number 3. First 2 loss number 3 in my eyes. I don't see a reason why they shouldn't be. Everything on paper says Ohio State is still that good in the regular season. As long as they don't stumble. If they can beat Michigan this year for the first time in 5 years, then there's an opportunity there. Number 4 is Clemson. Like I said in your bracket, I don't love Clemson. I don't hate Clemson completely, but it's hard to say in the ACC that there's not a team better than Clemson. Because right now it feels like it's Clemson's show until otherwise proven. Although Dabo Swinney needs to get some beef in there. But hey, there's my Texas joke for you. Getting the beef in there. Anyways, yeah, so I have Clemson wrapping up at number 4. Now the next 8 teams, the way it breaks down: Georgia, number 5, second in the SEC. Again, they're a really good team, just not great. And I think that's the important factor there. Number 6, Penn State. Given their schedule, looks like they'll likely only lose to Ohio State and just be outside looking in going into the Big Ten championship game. And that's going to be tough, but Penn State is still a really good team at number 6. At number 7, I have the Big 12 champion, Kansas Jayhawks, led by one Jalen Daniels. And if you don't know, you better learn. This man is absolutely fantastic. I have talked about him for 3 seasons now. He has been injured 2 of those 3 seasons, so maybe I shouldn't talk about him. But honestly, I think he's a fantastic player. I wish Devin Neal was still with his team. But now he's in the NFL playing with the Saints. Best running back in the Big 12 last 2 years. That's all I'm going to say. Anyways, Kansas, number 7. Number 8 is that Garrett Nussmeier and those LSU Tigers. The wrong color Tigers in that case. They're not orange. They're not blue. They're some weird yellow color and some purple. Anyways, they need to get a better mascot that doesn't look like he's been on Bourbon Street the whole night. But LSU, number 8, Brian Kelly. If you can't get in with Garrett Nussmeier, who is odds on the number 1 quarterback going into the draft, you're messing up. This team looks good. Everything about LSU continues to be good. You have a dominant recruiting region. Nobody touches Louisiana, and barely anybody touches Mississippi like LSU does. If it wasn't for Ole Miss, it would literally be LSU's show again. So yeah, LSU is just that good. Number 9, this is the only team that does have any recruiting conversation in Louisiana, and it's because LSU can't get them all. And that's Tulane. I do have Tulane as that next option, the first out of the next 5, the group of 5. This team has been impressive the last few years. I hate the fact they say roll wave. I wish they would just be go wave or something like that.
Wave.
Yeah. But anyways, Tulane, I've been a fan of Tulane for a long time as far as football goes. I think they're a great conversation piece. And they're showing that you can bring actual talent to a school that is known for its academics. And they're doing so. It's a very expensive school, by the way, in case nobody knew. It's very SMU-like. Well, speaking of SMU, guess what? Number 10, SMU. ACC is going to be a tough sled. SMU has a very interesting opportunity. They do match up against Clemson in the regular season. They also match up against Miami in the regular season. If you can take one of the 2 of those and you can win the rest of your ACC matchups, you should be in the conversation for a championship game, ACC championship game, where in my eyes, I have them losing to Clemson. Oh no, you lost to Clemson twice. What did I just say about Ohio State? That's right. That puts you pretty good. Well, you're pretty good if you only lost to Clemson twice. Should be good enough to be a number 10 seed. Number 11 is another SEC school, but it's one that I think most people are trying to write off right now because they're not sold somewhere or another. Lenore Sellers maybe sells you, maybe doesn't sell you. For me, I think he's an interesting piece, and I think he might be a dark horse for a Heisman conversation, but I don't know if I'm not sold on him yet. But I do think South Carolina is good enough given their schedule, and they also match up against Clemson, by the way, in this season. So there's a possibility Clemson matches up with 8 ranked teams. Now, maybe not all top 25 by the end of the season, but as of right now, they have about 6 on their schedule, which is a crazy conversation. But South Carolina is another one of those teams where they can keep it together until the end of the season. They play Clemson that last rivalry weekend. Make or break, whether they win or lose. I still think they've secured themselves a place in the playoffs. Maybe they don't. I don't know. We'll see. But they would be like the 3rd SEC school at that point in time. So this gets a little tougher. And then the 4th SEC school, because the voting team knows nothing more than to put another random SEC school in there. And they love them some Lane Kiffin. I do think that Ole Miss is a very interesting approach, or is a very interesting team to watch. I can't place my finger on it, but I don't want to sell Ole Miss just yet. I feel like they are that good that they can make a conversation for themselves, only losing 2, maybe 3 games this season, all to ranked teams, all probably to a team that's in here, whether it be Texas, whether it be LSU, whether it be Georgia, I guess I should say the 5th SEC school. So probably not going to be that's probably going to be the one that ends up getting bounced for somebody else, maybe another Big Ten school. But yeah, that's where I have my 12. You can flame me in the comments if you want, but just, I don't blame you. So round 1, how do I have this going? Georgia, I'm going to start there. They beat Ole Miss. Probably not surprising anybody. Penn State, they're going to beat South Carolina. I think Penn State, like you said, Franklin has the team rolling the right way. Drew Aller could be in that same conversation as Garrett Nussmeier, where you're like, all right, who's number 1? We'll see at the end of the season. Maybe the only upset here in this round is going to be SMU over Kansas. I like Kansas. I like them a lot, but I like what SMU has been doing the last 2 years, especially talk about school that has money, that brings it in and shows it for the athletic team. SMU is that squad. And let's not forget, historically, SMU, when not in the death penalty, they're a really good football team. It's in Dallas, Texas, ladies and gentlemen. Texas loves football. Enough said. And then in the LSU-Tulane matchup, in the battle for Louisiana, LSU. So that sets us up with some very interesting matchups in the next round. LSU, Texas, Clemson, Georgia, OSU, Penn State, so another Big Ten rematch there, and SMU, Oregon. Lots of very interesting conversations, lots of very interesting team matchups. But just to rip the Band-Aid off, we'll start with Texas, LSU, Texas. And then in Oregon versus SMU, Oregon, I don't know if I need to go into much detail other than Oregon just Dan Lanning, prove it to me otherwise that he is not one of the best coaches in college football. I can say the same about Sark right now. Ohio State, Penn State. I have Ohio State winning a close one there. Ryan Day does pull off a close one because it's a battle of a guy who can't win the close ones and a guy who can't win the big ones. And I don't know which one it's going to be that pushes it out. But you know what? I'm going to have Ohio State because they just are that good. Jeremiah is just that good. Good luck trying to stop him. Caleb Downs is a really, really good corner. And then Clemson, Georgia, the battle for that, I-94 or whatever it is, thoroughfare. I have Clemson beating Georgia. That's going to be another close game. I don't think Kirby lets that one get out of hand. I don't think either team has a really great offense. I think there's a situation where it just comes down to who made the least mistakes. And as you mentioned, second-year quarterback for Georgia, not really had much chance to really shine. Can he do enough against Clemson? I don't think so. I think Cade Klubnik has enough in the tank to get him over that line. So these semifinals, Texas versus Clemson, Oregon versus Ohio State. As you see there, no surprise to anybody. Texas beating Clemson. I think I've said that enough. I love where Texas is. And Ohio State beating Oregon. I guess that's your upset there in that round. Again, Ohio State, as you talked about it, it's hard to repeat, but at the same time, getting back to the national championship after a win isn't necessarily the hardest thing for a team. But winning the national championship is the hardest part. So with that said, my natty, it goes to Texas. And like you, I also have Texas here. It wasn't intentional. It was far from intentional. I even talked about it in the offseason that I might have Ohio State going back-to-back. The way I have these two teams matched up with Arch there, versus Ohio State. I'm not sold on Ohio State's quarterback situation, and I'm not sold on Ryan Day with Ohio State's quarterback situation. And that's what makes it different for me. I think they're good. I think they're really good, and no matter what I think about Ryan Day, I think he can get them there. But I just don't know if, when it comes to offensive minds, if he matches Sark's offensive mind. And I think Texas with Arch and the rest of that squad and their defense, I think makes the difference for me. For Ohio State to lose in that one and Texas to take the championship.
We'll say that national championship matchup has so many future NFL players in it. I think both of ours, you could put those teams together. You can make not a good NFL team necessarily, but you could create a bottom tier NFL team with just those two combined. So I think that's something to definitely look out for. I do find it interesting, and I think they're kind of in that group where I kind of talked about from like 10 to 15 in mind, where there's a lot of, you can shake them around. That's where I have South Carolina, for example. If Sellers can really sell it this year, I think he can definitely climb into the 11th spot. You said they do have Stewart, arguably the best defensive end in the country. After what he did as a true freshman last year, he was the best defensive end named Stewart in the country last year. He just didn't get drafted like it because he wasn't eligible. That they have a very good defense. Ole Miss will be interesting. I'm curious how they are without Jackson Dart leading the way because I think what he did last year in that offense was sensational. So I'm curious how they'll replace that. Kansas, anyone who wants to hear about your thoughts on Kansas? We have 3 years worth of it with Jalen Daniels.
Yes.
If he stays healthy, I like him a lot. SMU is another one that's interesting to me because they got in there last year. That offense was incredible, but the way they kind of faltered when they got there has me a little bit worried. Will they be able to bounce back off that? If they are able to, this is very, very likely where they can get in there, possibly even win a game like you had. They were one of those for me that were there's 2 of those spots for there's 3 of those spots for 10, 11, 12. And I have like 6 teams that make a lot of sense. So unfortunately, no matter how many teams we add to the playoffs, some teams have to get hosted or worthy teams aren't going to make it. Just the nature of the
Look,
game. So I like how
if you
yours did
don't
play out though. I think there were some similarities.
if you don't know who Kevin Jennings is yet for SMU, you better go
Oh, they
watch
don't
some
know.
tape. It's just like
We all
if
know
you don't
he
know
is.
who Kevin Jennings is, you got to go watch some tape on SMU, and that's my big reason why I think him and Rhett Lashley have a great quarterback coach relationship, and that SMU team is going to be dangerous.
I will say those who do know who he is, you need to go watch every game besides the playoff game because that was not indicative of how good Kevin Jennings actually normally is. That was probably the worst game he's ever played. If you watch any other game of the season, yeah, you're getting a real nice Kevin. You're getting a real nice Jennings there. But both of us, like you mentioned, with Texas winning the entire thing, probably the odds-on favorite for the most part now. I'm excited for this week 1 game. I can't wait for this one. For you, it is a national championship preview. Doesn't get any better than that to hit August 30th. This is I think if either one of these brackets shape up, it's going to be fun. And then there's going to almost guarantee 1 or 2 teams that neither one of us has. That's going to squeak in there somewhere. Just like, oh, there might be a Miami. Maybe Carson Beck gets a facial reconstruction and has a complete change of identity and is absolutely awesome this year. But
There will
I'm
be
not
no
putting my
Sid
breath on
from
that.
Ice Age in the playoffs.
We'll see. Maybe Miami ends up with like a world beater defense and like 3 deep running back like it's the early 2000s, and he just
Unless
has
they
good
come out
Smith.
with a new Ice Age movie, there will be no Sid in the playoffs.
My point remaining, there will probably be at least 1 or 2 teams in here that we're not even considering that's going to squeak their way in there, and then 1 or 2 teams we think will be locks, and it's going to be like, what happened to them? Why did they fall
That's
off the
probably
face of
true.
the earth? But hey, let us know down in the comments whose bracket do you like more, or are we both complete trash? And then let us know who you have taken home the Natty this year. We appreciate y'all for joining us, and we'll see you all again next time.